for Monday, May 19th, 2025. We have 3 agenda items tonight. We have number 1, residential waste engagement project update. Number 2, proposed next chapter 2J bond fund project list. And number 3, the drone regulations. We're going to start, as we always do, with public comments. Thank you, Councilor Hoppe. You may speak tonight on any of the 3 agenda items. When I call your name, please come up to the podium, introduce yourself, let us know whether you live or work in Wheat Ridge, and let us know which agenda item you intend to speak on. I have 2 people on the agenda tonight, so first up is Stu Stewart with Kelly Blinn on deck.
Hello and good evening, everybody. I'm Stu, last name Stewart, S-T-E-W-A-R-T. I am a Wheat Ridge resident, been here for just over 10 years in District 2. And really, I'm just here tonight to express appreciation for council's recommendations to and support of city staff looking into how to improve services for Wheat Ridge residents. Really, this waste engagement project has been a challenging one to compile, assess, and coming out of it, I think it's really a few good directions that Mary will have a chance to present us some more information this evening. And so really just want to express appreciation. I do like the fact that we're looking to link up with existing programs. You know, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We're also considering the data that we have collected from existing programs here within Wheat Ridge. And so looking back at that data and making an informed decision to benefit all the residents of Wheat Ridge is really something I appreciate. So thanks for doing that. Thanks for continuing to support our city staff. Looking forward to, you know, expanded services, but that will be efficient, cost effective, and really benefit all of Wheat Ridge. So thank you all. Next up, we have Kelly Blinn. While she's coming up, I'll remind you that we have a 3-minute time clock. You check the light up there. It's green, it's good. It's yellow, and
okay, great. Thank you. My name's Kelly Blinn. I'm with the Wheat Ridge Active Transportation Advisory Team, and just wanted to comment tonight on the 2J portion of the packet. The ADATs are really supportive of 2J. We're really excited to see that it passed with such flying colors at the ballot, and just the continued high support that we've been seeing from residents for improved bike and pedestrian facilities in various planning efforts and neighborhood surveys, as the packet notes. Just wanted to add a few comments from my perspective, from our perspective as well. On the 38th Avenue refresh project, we're really excited to see this project move forward on the east end of 38th. It's really the city's main street and a real opportunity to improve the ability to walk and bike to all the great destinations and businesses along there. We'd love to see a focus on, you know, not just the portion that's maybe going to be the primary focus of the study, but to make sure that the study area does get extended to thinking about how can we connect to those great new multi-use paths on Wadsworth, and also thinking about going east towards lots of the businesses that are east of Harlan, which is, I think, the extent of the study area currently. We've also been working with some parents at Stevens Elementary who have a lot of concerns about crossing 38th, so hope that there will be a real focus on that area and the intersections around Stevens to make sure that that's safe for the kids. I think one thing that we're a little bit concerned about is seeing the repaving projects in 2J. This is really meant to kind of catalyze some new infrastructure and investments in bike and pedestrian facilities in the city. And just want to make sure that if that is eating up some of the 2J funds, that it's being used to advance improving bike and pedestrian safety in the city. We saw that with the repaving of Harlan, that these things can be incorporated when there are regular maintenance projects going on. But it wasn't clear from the packet if that would be a priority in those repaving projects. Also just wanted to say we really support the sidewalk gaps piece. Wasn't exactly sure how all those got prioritized, and I think we'd love to continue to engage in that conversation, but would love to see a focus on filling in gaps, particularly around schools and parks, to make sure folks can get safely there, like the sidewalk along 32nd to the high school, as well as filling in the gap along 29th Street to Stites Park and the park here. And then finally, just want to reemphasize our support for the 35th Avenue project. The ADATs have been involved in that for a long time and are excited to see that design move forward. So thank you so much for your time and look forward to hearing the discussion.
Thank you. Seeing nobody else, we don't have anybody online. No, thank you. Let's move to agenda item number 1. That's the residential waste engagement program update. And we'll go to Deputy Director Scheck.
Thank you so much, Mayor Pro Tem Stites. Just turn it over to Assistant City Manager Mary Ann Schilling for an introduction. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. As you may recall, we were here in November 2024 to have a discussion on residential waste programming. And at that time, City Council directed staff to conduct further research on several topic areas. So tonight, the conversation is really about updates on the progress made to date, and it outlines where staff is looking to seek council input in the fairly early stages as we build this programming. So I will now turn it over to Mary Hester, our Sustainability Coordinator, to lead this presentation.
Awesome. Thanks, Marianne. Hi, everyone. I'm Mary Hester, Sustainability Coordinator, and I'll give you an update. We'll start with our agenda. We'll start off with the purpose of this update, then I'll give you a quick recap of the project's background and outcomes. Then I'll give an update on each of the action items that we were directed to take next steps on. We'll talk briefly about some additional next steps and what feedback we're looking to hear from you all tonight. And then we should have plenty of time for feedback and questions at the end. All right. So the purpose of this presentation is to provide you all with an update on the progress that we've made to date towards the next steps of the residential waste engagement project, following the direction that we received from City Council at the November 18th, 2024 study session. And as part of this update, I will also discuss some considerations like funding needed to implement some of these steps. And then at the end, we'd also like to hear your general feedback on the direction that we're taking. So with those goals in mind, it is going to be a little bit early in the 2026 budget cycle to be discussing any numbers in great detail, but we can at least start the conversation, look at some potential event costs, program costs, and start to gauge the priority level of those items. All right. So as a quick recap, this project took place between July of 2023 and November of 2024. It was led by staff in partnership with our consultant, HDR Engineering. This was a public engagement project focused on better understanding what residents were thinking about the current open market system, if there's any appetite for changes to that system, and what some of those changes might be. And so through attending events, open houses, conducting public surveys, we were able to engage with over 1,000 residents. And throughout that engagement, we were really focused on being inclusive, neutral in our stance, and informative. And then at the November 18th study session last year, the project team presented 5 final recommendations to City Council. We had a discussion at that time about the best ways to move forward with those, if there were any tweaks needed. And so we walked away from that meeting with further direction from you all to explore 5 implementation areas, which are detailed on this slide. And so most of these will focus on events and communication, marketing, but I am going to go through each of these 5 items and just give a quick update on the progress that we've made and what we're kind of working on in each of these areas. So we'll start with exploring the possibility of expanding our waste events, mostly focusing on the free TLC cleanup events offered by Local Works in partnership with the city. So there are typically 4 of these events each year between June and September, held at different locations around Wheat Ridge. And again, these are totally free events. At these events, people can bring a variety of items, so trash like old tires, mattresses, broken furniture, recycling, and all events this year will accept yard waste and paint. And then sometimes they will accept specialty items at these TLC events. One of the 2025 events will accept electronic waste. As far as budget goes, these events cost about $26,000 total last year. They cost about $6,000 to $8,000 per event, depending on the final weights collected. Last year, over 110,000 pounds of waste was collected, so they are quite impactful. In 2025, Local Works has a budget of $33,600 for these 4 events, and that added cost is mostly going towards that one event that will collect e-waste. And it's important to note that Local Works has observed that these events are very heavily attended in the first couple of events, but attendance does seem to drop off as we get later in the season. Bends maybe aren't filling totally up or aren't filling up as quickly. And so back in November, when we're starting to think of how to kind of scale up the impact of our community events, just looking at attendance of TLC days and thinking about staff capacity, we're thinking a better place to start may actually be with dumpster grants. So Local Works is dumpster grants. That's another program under the TLC umbrella. Neighborhoods can apply to receive a 20-yard dumpster over a long weekend, and they can use that to dispose of things like yard waste, furniture, general trash, small appliances, and neighborhoods have to have at least 5 people agree to participate when they are applying. So this isn't just someone getting a free dumpster for like their personal kitchen remodel. This is really meant to be a collaborative community neighborhood improvement effort. As far as that budget goes, this year Local Works has a budget of $6,500 for dumpster grants that will cover approximately 15 grants. And in past years and this year, the program has been in very high demand. Those grants tend to get snapped up really quickly. There's only about 5 left for this year. And so if we were to consider possibly increasing that program budget next year, doubling it to $13,000, that would allow us to double the impact of this program. And it is helping to provide localized waste solutions for neighborhoods. So that is one of the things that we'll be asking for some more feedback on at the end of this presentation. We also have some other events planned out in 2025. Parks recently held a branch drop-off event. They had about 75 participants. Applewood Villages had a neighborhood e-waste event through the Sustainable Neighborhoods program with about 70 attendees last weekend. And then I'm looking at holding an additional late spring yard waste event, another fall e-waste event. We'll have a paint recycling event this summer. And then we will continue to hold our regular fall yard waste collection events, but we are looking at, can we add another weekend, some additional dates, some additional appointment slots, and expand those as well. And we also heard from council at the November meeting that accessibility is a high priority when it comes to addressing our waste management services and events. Many of our events do tend to be drop off in nature. They're often involving large or heavy items. So to better support residents who may have transportation or physical limitations, staff is currently exploring partnerships with organizations like A Little Help. That's a nonprofit that connects volunteers with older adults in need. To share a possible example of how that could work, so our yard waste weekend in the fall, if someone was unable to collect their yard waste or to bag it up, or maybe they don't have a car to transport it all to the event, they could register with A Little Help to be connected with someone nearby who's already been vetted through all of the safety and security processes and just wants to help in their community. I'm also working on planning a workshop and putting together some outreach materials to help make residents and maybe their caregivers more aware of this resource and how to get started. And additionally, I plan to work with our Sustainable Neighborhoods on a similar system to just encourage residents to kind of help their neighborhoods participate in events when they're going on. That's something that Lakewood has done in their Sustainable Neighborhoods program, and it sounds like it's been pretty successful. We were also directed in lieu of creating a new permanent yard waste drop-off and recycling drop-off site in Wheat Ridge to just look at some possible existing partnerships with nearby municipalities and organizations. So this is one of the ones that we're in the really early stages of, but we are really excited about the potential of these partnerships. We'll continue to keep you updated as we make progress, but some of the organizations that we're looking at Quail Street Recycling in Lakewood, that's already free and open to everyone. And then the Rooney Road Recycling Center, which is more for kind of electronic waste, hazardous household waste sort of items. Rooney Road is already discounted to Wheat Ridge residents, and they can provide pickup services to those who need it, but there is a cost to all of those services. Their operating hours are pretty limited and appointments are required. So could we just figure out a way to improve that for our residents? So some ideas that we are exploring: city-sponsored vouchers. So could we provide just like a flat discount or a percentage off, or just cover the fee for a set number of participants to maybe drop off their items at Rooney Road or a similar organization? Could we similarly cover the costs for people who are needing their items picked up for them? Could we determine maybe a few days a year, have special days or events at somewhere like Rooney Road to improve the operating hours and availability and accessibility in that sense? And then with any partnership, what sort of messaging are we going to need for something like Quail Street Recycling, if it's already open, free? Could we just work on some sort of co-branded outreach campaign with Lakewood and just work on making our residents more aware? So those are the types of ideas that we're starting to evaluate. I know I posed probably more questions there than anything, but in starting to think through those, we're trying to be creative. We're trying to be mindful of the administrative burden on Wheat Ridge staff, and then also just trying to improve or trying to identify improvements that could be scaled up or scaled down from year to year, kind of depending on budget availability. So again, we'll keep you updated on that, but we are really excited about it and also very open to any other ideas for partnerships.
Oh, you
There's more. I'm sorry. We're getting there. All right, so we'll move on to item 3. Large item collection events. So the Public Works Department continues to offer one free large item pickup event each year. It is over the course of 2 weekends, typically in the spring. So in 2024, there were 190 spots available for that program. It's free, if I didn't mention that. 174 spots were filled in 2024. The cost to the city is about $25 per item, so that was about $4,300 last year. This year, there were also 190 spots available. 95 of those were filled. Registration is closed. The first pickup was last weekend. I believe the second pickup date is this upcoming weekend. This event is marketed on the city's website, news flashes, Wheat Ridge Gazette, social media. So I do think that it's kind of hitting all the major avenues as far as that goes. But there did seem to be a drop in participation this year. But I do want to note, it sounded like many event regulars still attended, and then it sounded like there was a big influx of kind of new area codes amongst registrants. So that might suggest there are new people moving into Wheat Ridge who were aware of the event and were able to participate. But attendance right now probably suggests that we don't need to increase the frequency of that event right now. However, we will continue to promote that event, to monitor attendance, and then there might be other things we can do to try and bump up attendance in the meantime. Like maybe we could look at the timing of the event, break it up more throughout the year. Okay. So item 4, public awareness. We are continuing, of course, to promote our events and programs. We typically do this through avenues like Connections, What's Up Wheat Ridge, social media. There's a lot of e-newsletters that staff sends out, flyers. And then I've also been working closely with champions from Sustainable Wheat Ridge and the Sustainable Neighborhoods program to try and just amplify those messages to our residents. And internally, I think staff takes a lot of efforts to share these events and other happenings across the city with each other in our cross-departmental meetings, as well as through the Municipal Sustainability Committee. And I think that really helps to kind of just cross-pollinate and spread the word further. So we'll continue to make sure that we are trying to market through various different channels and tracking the attendance at events and effectiveness of some of these techniques. I try and create bit.ly links to track, like if I got a link in a newsletter versus the website versus a social media post, is one getting more traction than the other. So we'll continue to do that and make adjustments as necessary. Okay. And then our final item, and then there's just a few more slides, looking at extended producer responsibility. So we continue to also be engaged in Colorado's Extended Producer Responsibility, or EPR, efforts. So as a reminder, that program at the state level is requiring major paper and packaging producers to fund and manage the end of life for those materials. So that includes collection, processing, and recycling. And so one of the biggest benefits for Colorado residents, therefore Wheat Ridge residents, will be the availability of recycling to all residents at no additional cost to them. And implementation of that will likely begin next year. Implementation of that is very much still being worked out. There's a lot of engagement and education happening right now that we are staying involved in. We presented about this project with HDR at a statewide webinar in January to kick off their EPR discussion series. So we'll continue to stay engaged. We'll provide an update as we get a little closer to 2026 and implementation beginning. All right. In terms of next steps, I pretty much already summarized that. Sorry. We will just continue to keep working on all of these action items, staying engaged in EPR efforts, and then we will use some of the feedback that we hear from you all tonight to help us out as we start to plan for next year. So I will leave this. This is our final slide. I'll leave this up on the screen. In terms of feedback, what I'm looking for you all from tonight, that just kind of generally hoping to get your feedback on the direction that we're taking with these next steps. And then wanting to start gauging the priority level when it comes to budget of implementing these next steps. I think specifically when it comes to us wanting to increase dumpster grant funding, and then needing to think about if it ends up being a tighter year next year and we can't do everything that we want to do, how should we start thinking of prioritizing like kind of events, pursuing partnerships? I think those are the two areas that would have a cost associated with them. And so with that, I will stop talking and I'm ready for questions and discussion.
Thank you, Ms. Hester. We will start with Counselor Weaver.
Thank you. Thank you for that presentation. I just have a couple things. I think all of these ideas are great, and I'm just going to give you some feedback because this is stuff that I was thinking about as I was reading through this over the weekend. And so I have a couple recycling pet peeves, not with the Sustainability Committee, but just in general, and that is plastic film. And those of you may probably know it's the Prime bags, it's bubble wrap, it's the plastic bags that you get at the grocery store. They're very hard to recycle, and you have to take them to the store, and you're not allowed to sometimes take back all sorts of film. And I was just curious if we could have some more information out there, because it actually took me about 3 hours to figure out what I could recycle. Plastic recycling is one of the things that just irritates me a lot. Because as you all know, at the farm, something eats almost every piece of waste we have at the farm, or, no, I'm teasing, but a lot of it. So I'd really love to see some of these things that are hard to recycle by anybody, even if you have pickup, around, and I think this is kind of low-hanging fruit as far as like, these are things that, it would just be really nice on the website if I could go there and know where styrofoam and the film plastic stuff is really my big pet peeve, and I have almost a garage filled with it because I'm so mad and I don't want to throw it away. But that's my personal issue that we won't talk about tonight. So film plastic and styrofoam, and then just more information on recycling e-waste too, because I think we throw away a lot of e-waste when actually we can also recycle it. And I'd love to see some of the, because you can go to Action Recycling and pay to have your electronics recycled, and they take it all apart. And but it would be nice if we had some partnerships, because I'm happy to pay to have some of that e-waste recycled. But again, it's the hour that it takes to figure out where to drive to take all this stuff, and then it just ends up in my garage. So my last comment is about the dumpster stuff. And I'm not saying I've ever done this, but I've seen people who look like me at dumpster days, saving things from the dumpster and taking them home. I know no one else does that. But I'm wondering if, we're going into an austere year. We know that. And just around a lot of things and products and product availability. And I'm wondering if we can be a little homey Wheat Ridge and think about, we also have a Habitat Restore right here. And I'm wondering if some of these large pickup days could become a little bit more fun, like a swap, right? And whatever's left at the end of the day goes in dumpsters, but just sort of in the spirit of, well, farm recycling, right? You keep everything until you need it. Or you trade it for somebody else with somebody else, and that's what I find happens in Wheat Ridge. But just some of those sort of fun things that we could put together and make into a fun thing, because I think we all know we end up throwing away things that somebody else could use, but I don't want to go on Facebook Marketplace to try and sell it for the $2 I'm going to get for it or whatever. So just I think some homey recycling that we could do around saving the amount of stuff that actually gets thrown away, and it could be, could be a fun thing. But maybe I'm the only one who likes to dumpster dive. Yeah, thanks. Those are my comments. Otherwise, I think all the plans are really great. And I just, again, it's just kind of that low-hanging fruit of the stuff we all know that it's like, oh, I end up throwing it away because I just didn't have the time or the knowledge or whatever. Thanks.
Thank you.
Counselor Hulteen.
I'm up. Thank you for this, and thanks for all your options you're bringing to us. I will just follow Councilor Weaver. I grew up near an office park, and I was like a world-class dumpster diver as a child. So I will challenge you to dumpster dive someday.
Dumpster dive.
Yeah, yeah.
There's our next event.
So actually, Councilmember Weaver did bring up something that I was going to mention in those hard to recycles, and I wonder if we couldn't look into some sort of partnership, like we have with some of our composters, where we could maybe partner with Ridwell or an equivalent who will, or maybe the city could figure out a way to have some sort of like large scale Ridwell recycling container that neighbors could use, because I think that is one area where it would make a difference with the intent. I think that the Sustainable Wheat Ridge had bringing this forward. A couple of other things, just going through them. So the dumpster grants, I definitely would support more of the grants for the neighbors coming together. It just takes a lot less programming and coordination and volunteerism, and really meets people literally where they are when they need it. So I like the flexibility of that program. And with the large item, I mean, we're not meeting full capacity. I do wonder if maybe splitting it up to offering half one, in the spring and half in the fall, because it could just align to Councilmember. It's fun going after you. To Councilmember Weaver's point, like we could even do something fun where it's like people put their stuff to the curb the couple days before, and then it's known in Wheat Ridge that like this is like curb weekend, and if you want to go cruise around Wheat Ridge with your truck to pick up other people's stuff, you could beat the city to it. But then a couple things just on the communication side. So with the dumpster days, like I love that there's like the specialty items, that there's an e-waste, and it would be really great with like the advertising for the dumpster days to make sure that's in there. But then also as part of the recycling program that's coming online in 2026, the more we can communicate that stuff, the better. And then it dawns on me, this is a lot of stuff we're already offering in addition to whatever might come forward in 2026. Do we have like a single web page where you can go to like get all of this information, or is it like piecemealed here and there?
Yeah, I think in the city, I mean, there's the calendar, there's news flashes on the front page of the website, but I don't personally have a page where I'm compiling like all of these events and resources. I think that would be a great idea.
Yeah, I think that
I
would
think it's
be
probably pretty
really
spread
helpful.
out.
We might get more efficient like utilization and if we could point people
Yeah.
there, that would be really good. And then with that, like a similar resource that's like maybe a postcard handout at like performances in the park. So that we just, because this is a lot, and as we were going through it, it dawned on me, it's probably in 18 different places. So bringing it all into one place is going to make communicating it better.
Yeah.
So that people can know what their options are as they're trying to navigate all of that. So, and I'm going to voluntold Sustainable Wheat Ridge to perhaps help with some of those like resources that are outside the city that are available. So I think that would be great, but thanks for your work on this.
All right. Thank you, Counselor Hoppy.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem States. Thank you for the update. I guess to answer your two questions, if the budget allows, are we supportive of an increase in your budget? And I would say my answer to that is yes. But when it gets to if it's a tighter budget year and how should you prioritize events, I think that really should be an administrative call as far as where you have found we've been more successful in keep the pieces where we've been more successful and ones that are not very utilized, then those are the ones that you would look at cutting first. And then I would just wanted to ask you a question real fast though about the large item collection events. Is there a minimum amount of, like, do we have, when we get that set up, is there a minimum amount of people that have to participate? You know the answer to that.
There is not. So we base the number of spots available based on the budget amount. So we talk, it's Republic Services that we contract with. And so basically, if the budget is X, we divide that by what they're going to charge us per item, and that's how many spots we offer. We're really not sure why we have so few signups this year. I think as Mary mentioned, we've done our usual outreach. So usually it's very, we just did the one last weekend or last Saturday, a couple of days ago. So good weather, everything. So just not sure what's going on, but it has been very well received over the years. But it's basically based on what our budget is.
So realistically, we could split that into 2 or even 3 times. So if you take your budget and you say, look, we want to do this maybe spring, fall and just before the holidays or just after the holidays or something.
Certainly. Yeah, we could certainly look at doing something like that.
And I support that being an administrative decision also. I don't feel like that needs to come back to council for that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Counselor Ohm.
Thank you. So a couple things. One with the Action Recycling, that's the one that has the styrofoam recycling, I believe. Which is the one that's in Arvada? Sustainability does, they do styrofoam. And I'm wondering if that would be possible to, I think for me, it's not that big of a deal. It's like a 10-minute drive to get up there, but it would be easier if we had, say, like, we would have like some type of collection in Wheat Ridge, and even if there was a fee involved, it would save people a lot of time to run up there. Right now, I think a lot of people don't understand that they can even do it, and so I think that styrofoam ends up getting into the garbage. And then on the Rooney recycling, that has a fee, but for some people, it's not just the fee, but it's the time it takes to go and drop off your little bit of chemical, and then you also have to make an appointment to drop off that little bit of chemical, plus the fee gets to be cumbersome. And so if there was an opportunity, a couple times a year, and I think it'd be great to have, if we had to pay some money to like, let's really tell the community, like, we want to get rid of your chemicals that have just been sitting around forever. And not just the paint, but a lot of the other pesticides and herbicides and have a collection, 2 or 3 times a year so people would know. I don't know that it'd have to be 4 times a year, but at least 2. I think that would be a great idea, just to have a central location, like, and we kind of market that we want to get rid of your chemicals that have just been sitting around and deteriorating in the containers. And then the last 2 things are grass clippings. And for me personally, it's like, I don't know what to do with it. So it's going in the garbage. And I wish I could, if there was somewhere within a 10-minute drive even, I would take my grass clippings there instead of it going into the garbage. But I just don't know where those opportunities are. I have recycling service, but grass clippings, sometimes it can be a couple bags at my house. And so if there is an opportunity to do that, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Counselor Snell.
Thank you, and thank you for this presentation, Mary. Appreciate it. A couple of things. First of all, I've heard from a couple of my co-counselors that the idea of splitting this up a little bit, say if we have 190 spots that we can afford each year, if we split it up, say, we only filled up 90 of those spots. If we split it up between spring and fall or something like that, or splitting anything so that folks who maybe do clean up over the summer and then in the fall, they're like, oh, wow, we have a lot of junk. What are we going to do with it? So maybe if that reopens, so that there may be 2 possibilities for large item pickup. If that truly is, what we were budgeted at, it just makes sense to me, if we're kind of missing folks that maybe haven't heard or just not ready to get rid of stuff yet. That's one thing. And then, let's see. I was thinking about the Sustainable Neighborhoods program, and is there a possibility, and I'm definitely not trying to put any more work on anyone, but is there a possibility for some of the members of that group to sort of be like ambassadors, or, if they know a neighbor, especially an elderly neighbor that might need help and they just don't know how to go about it, would there be a way for them to kind of be that person to go to and say, hey, let me help you get a dumpster. Let me help you get rid of whatever it is you have to get rid of. Has that been explored?
I think that's a great idea, because I rely on members from like Sustainable Wheat Ridge and Sustainable Neighborhoods just in general to kind of help spread the word. So I think that if we could put together some specific communication for them about waste and all the resources available and like events and a little help, then that would enable them, I think, even better to be able to answer more specific questions. So sort of, but I really like your idea, and that's a great idea. Yeah.
Sure, thank you. And again, don't want to put more work on anyone, but I do know a lot of those folks, and they are just like super kind and want to help however they can, and just like most of our neighbors are, want to help. So another thought with this whole like go through junk and swap it. We have a huge artist community here, and a lot of art that is created out of found items. I had to, yeah. Oh, yeah, you're right. I happened to find this in my neighbor's garage. No, I'm just kidding. In Amanda's garage. No, I really like that, and I feel like that's there. I've been involved in many dumpster days, and I do see a lot of things going in dumpsters that still have life in some other capacity, perhaps. So I like that idea. And let me just make sure this is all really good discussion, and I appreciate this coming up. Yeah, I think that's it for now. Thank you.
All right, we'll go to Counselor Dozman.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I would like to just echo some of the comments that have already been made in regards to as much as we can lean on the partnerships and utilize as opposed to duplicating. And Councilmember Ohm's suggestion of just providing like those links and those resources, but also if there are ways in which we can partner with like the city of Lakewood or the recycling centers and do more of a community kind of event, but have them like pay the fee in lieu of our residents. If, I don't know if more people get a better rate, and that was one of the questions I had in regards to the large item pickup. Is it a matter of we could split it up, or is it like 190 in one gets you a better price than if you were to split it up amongst two pickups?
Thanks, Maria.
Yeah, I think if we broke it up like 190, let's say, I don't think they'd probably want to do it, come out for like 20 or 30. But I think if we did 2 or 3 events, to Councilmember Hoppy's point, one in the spring, one in the fall, I think that's very doable and still keep within our budget.
Okay, wonderful. I also really appreciate the dumpster grants. I think that that's a wonderful program, and it kind of meets the residents where they're at. I know we've utilized it in our neighborhood a couple of times, and it's been very well received, and it's a great way to meet your neighbor and kind of clear out your trash all in one. And I think increasing the budget for that would be great, but I also agree that it would be an administrative kind of discernment if there's priorities or you see the need somewhere else, then to just kind of focus funding there. Thank you.
Counselor Weaver, I think you had raised your hand one more time. Okay, Counselor Larson.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, and compliments on a very thorough presentation here. I was wondering, though, we do see we've got a cost of a program and a cost of a program. Is there anywhere where all of the expenses are aggregated into a single place, a final number?
I don't have that, but I could put that together and get that out to everyone.
Well, it would help. I think I'm more in favor of maybe holding the line and not doing a lot of increases this year, given the sort of the long-term outlook. We've got a number of very good programs in place, and I think we probably would benefit by keeping it flat for a year or two, see what sort of programs are more effective than others, which ones are used more. I like the idea of event sponsors and maybe reaching out to recycling companies or companies like Waste Management or somebody who is in that business and would be willing to pitch in financially. And then the other question on item number 5 I had was the EPR program that is coming about next year. We've mentioned that it includes free recycling, and for those individuals and communities that already pay companies like Waste Management to recycle material for us, are those fees going to go away, or will they be sort of rolled in, or maybe a tax break? How is that going to work?
Yes, that's a really good question. I don't have an exact answer for it. I do know that, so this is going to be on a reimbursement basis for waste haulers, so I'm not sure how that's going to impact their pricing, and that's kind of one of the things that we've been discussing. It's going to be one of those things that's hard to track, is they're meant to be recycling or offering recycling at no additional cost, but that's going to be really hard to track whether that's actually happening. Are they just raising up like prices of trash services, and that's kind of like rolling recycling into it. So I think ultimately that's something I would need to look more into. A lot of it is still being figured out, but I'd be happy to put together some more information.
I would appreciate that because, again, we're hearing about this program, and it sounds like it's going to be very beneficial, but there is that question for those of us that already pay for recycling. Where does that come in at? But yeah, no, I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Counselor Weaver?
Thanks. Just a few more quick things. First of all, I think the thing that would be most helpful, and I think Councilor Hulteen put it into words, is just having these resources on the website would be super, super helpful. Even if we spend no money towards anything else, just knowing where I can take these things and their hours and how to call them and stuff like that, that would be great. Secondly, I already have the T-shirt in my head about dumpster diving, and we figure out how we then fund the pool at Anderson. We call it the deep dive. We do it over years. Mary Ann loves this.
Now we're getting somewhere.
Yeah. You can see I'm putting Rachel on T-shirts because she's really good at, she's already on it. Okay, my last thing has nothing to do with this, but I'm pretty sure it's under the Sustainability Committee, and I had a constituent call me, and so since you're here, they ripped out all the grass in their yard and put in something, I don't know, and of course wants to know our program about that, about xeriscaping. Where can I give them information, or where can they go? I don't know if you're still doing reimbursements or whatever you're doing.
Yes. So we partner with Resource Central. We offer their Garden in a Box program, which is just like kind of like paint by number, but plant by number garden kits. We offer a $25 discount to our residents on those. The spring sale sold out. The summer sale, I believe, starts on June 18th, and we do have some discounts left.
Was this though, I can't remember if this was through sustainability or if this was through planning. We talked about the xeriscaping program, and can somebody tell me if there was I know it was like you could do X amount of your yard, but I wasn't sure if there was an encouragement or something. Can somebody tell me?
To the best of my knowledge, the last time that we talked about it was that Patrick said it was not for individuals just yet. It was more for municipalities, was my understanding. So I haven't.
So there's
heard-
no money out there.
I haven't heard anything.
Let's
for
give it back to
specific.
Mary real quick. She's got.
Oh,
There is. There's one more program also through. No, you're okay. Also through Resource Central, our lawn replacement program. Yes, and so with that, residents are eligible for up to a $750 discount. That would kind of depend on how much grass they were removing, if they could get the maximum discount, but they could get up to $750. I believe through Resource Central, so there's a couple of different avenues, like you could hire them to do the removal, or you could do it yourself. I believe all of their Resource Central turf removal appointments have already been filled up, so they're trying to push.
they've already done it.
Oh, okay.
So again, is this out on a website that I can point people to? Because I'm getting more and more questions about this from people.
Yeah, I can email it to you real quick. We do have info on our website, but I'll just send you the Resource Central.
Thank you. I apologize. I just couldn't, I remember having this conversation and I had no idea.
Yeah.
All right. Let's go back to Counselor Snell.
Apologies, this popped into my head right after I said I have nothing else. I saw a post on social media a few weeks ago, and unfortunately, someone was not kind, and they dumped a bunch of large furniture in someone's alley. I know that this may not cover, this is not directly related, but I feel like this should at least be mentioned, because that responsibility was then falling on the homeowner to get rid of that, and it's really unfortunate. And so I at least wanted to throw it out and mention it this is, and it hopefully doesn't happen a ton, but I also wanted to just kind of mention, this is another situation where probably someone has like a really old crappy couch in their alley and it's not theirs and they need to get rid of it. And so thinking about how else we could assist residents with that, and thinking that it's probably not going to happen a lot, but it's unfortunate no matter what. That's all I've got. Thank you.
I'll just say real quick, last year, one of the things that I loved was Applewood Sustainable Neighborhood did a very large garage sale, hosted a large garage sale. And if we did something like that, kind of towards Counselor Weaver's point, and then followed it up with maybe a dumpster for the neighborhood or something like that, and get rid of some of the stuff that didn't sell, that might be a good way to go with that. I think the smaller dumpster days are really helpful. One of our neighbors did that recently, and it seemed like it was great for the entire neighborhood. So do you need anything else from us on this one, Ms. Hester?
Member Tim, I just heard from Paige Piper, the Executive Director of Local Works, and she just wanted to share that turf replace xeriscaping can be funded through a Local Works bubble loan, even for residential. So it's a loan, but it's low interest loan. So that's something we can also potentially add to our information and get that out there. So thanks to Paige for listening in and providing information.
That's great.
Sorry, thank you.
No, that's great. Anything else you want to add to that?
I don't think so. I think I'm all set. Thank you.
Awesome. All right. Seeing nothing else? All right. Fantastic. We will move on to agenda item number 2, which is the proposed next chapter, 2J Fund Bunding, or Fund Bond project list. Hard words, all in one. Bun fond. We're fond of those buns.
Maria, are you going to do screen beam? Yeah. I've got you up here if you want to connect. Yeah. Well, Director DeAndrea is setting up. I'm sorry, do we have a working mic down there now?
Yeah, this works.
I'm so sorry. I don't know. Sorry about the popping. I was trying to get that all plugged in. Those ones aren't. Do you want me to bring over the handheld? Are you sure? Okay.
All right, we will give it over to Director DeAndrea.
Thank you.
There we are. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, and good evening, City Council members. I'm here tonight to talk about how we've essentially tried to define and refine the list of projects that we're anticipating to be able to fund underneath our 2J bond initiative. As you may recall, this was passed in the fall of '23. And in the fall of 2024, we issued the first tranche of bond proceeds, which netted us about $33.3 million. And at the time, when we initially talked about these projects, there was a lot of excitement, a lot of hope, and our needs, as we all know, are greater than our funding capacity. So it has been a challenge. We've met several times internally to talk about how do we take all these great projects, how do we prioritize them based both on the feedback from council as well as the feedback we've heard along the way over the last several years through our various outreach efforts. So this is the culmination of that effort and all of those internal discussions. And tonight we're really coming before you to ensure that we have the right list and get concurrence to move forward so that we can start to put this out to the public and give them more specific timelines. We have had several comments from people like they're super excited, they want to do this, and they just want to know, are they in or out? So if there's a sidewalk, one of the gentlemen that contacts me probably every other month is along 26th Avenue, just west of Gold's Marketplace. And he's like, Maria, any update? And I'm like, hold on, we're still working through it. So I'll be excited to speak with him soon to talk about where we go from here. Mary? Thing ain't working. There we go. Okay. I continue to have challenges with this. So as you may recall, we have 3 big buckets of projects. So it was not intended to be just for sidewalks and bikeways, but also about corridors or roadways as well as drainage. So all 3 of those areas continue to be addressed within the proposed list of projects that you'll see tonight. And where we can, especially in the corridor projects, we're also incorporating elements of improvements to both sidewalks and bikeways as well as drainage. So we're trying to hit more than one category with those corridor projects. So where we've landed at is continuing to do the 38th West project that extends all the way from Youngfield to Kipling. That is very expensive at over, right now, our estimate for construction, along with construction management, testing, all of the other requirements, as well as design, is just over $26.4 million. So right there is about 1/3 of it. That makes it tough, right? When we have one project that eats up so much of that. That's very, it's a critical project. Again, we're providing sidewalks as well as on-street bikeways, bike lanes for that. So it is hitting all of those categories as well as improved drainage. But it is a very expensive project. We've talked previously about the 38th refresh between essentially east of Wadsworth, so roughly Upham, but I showed it here from Wadsworth, extending all the way to Harlan. This is where we have the older or Excel-owned streetlights as opposed to our own. Just a kind of a tired area that we want to refresh and upgrade a lot of those improvements, staying within the curb lines, but really focusing on those bike and ped improvements, making it for a more enjoyable atmosphere. And then we are contributing to the roundabout that's being designed by the city of Edgewater. So we would contribute half of the cost of that. That was intended to be constructed this year, but has been delayed as they had to move their money for CIP to other areas, other priorities within Edgewater. But the intent there would be to reimburse the city of Edgewater for 50% of the costs of design and construction of that roundabout. We were also able to keep in at least traffic studies, if not the actual projects, to evaluate a new traffic signal at 44th and Tabor. That's at the corner of Heine's Market. It's in the northwest corner for those of you who are more familiar with those types of landmarks. We see, just because, you know, the shop, Public Works shop is very close to there, I see a lot of people making that southbound left to go eastbound on 44th and a lot of near misses. They're trying to find that gap in the traffic. It's 5 lanes really if you count the eastbound left turn lane. So they're trying to cross multiple lanes of traffic to get out there. So I foresee that will do what's called a traffic warrant analysis to see if a traffic signal meets the criteria, the federal standards for installing a traffic signal. And then at 44th and Eldridge, there is an existing traffic signal there that we took over from Jeffco many, many years ago. It really is at the end of its life. There's also a spur railroad crossing just to the east of there that's interconnected with that signal. And so we want to evaluate that for either replacement or possibly installing a roundabout, which may in the long run be cheaper just because we'll have less electricity costs, less overall maintenance costs with a roundabout as opposed to a signal. So both of those would just be the studies that would be covered under 2J. And then pavement maintenance, we have cut this down significantly from what we had anticipated. Unfortunately, our CIP budget, as you may recall, is really challenged for this year and next year due to the ongoing Wadsworth project. And so we have put money in, and we're always anticipating putting money in the 2J to supplement our pavement maintenance efforts. So while this doesn't necessarily directly address sidewalks and bikeways, we do intend to mark and cross-check our list of streets each year. This year we'll be in Zone 1, which is kind of the southwestern corner there, or 1/3 of the city. And anywhere where, based on the bike ped plan, that there's priorities to mark for shared bikeways or other facilities that we can improve as we're doing those streets that meet the pavement maintenance criteria, we will implement that as part of that contract. So we'll move from 1 to 2 to 3 around the city. We also will be doing preventative maintenance, excuse me. Oops. Going around. Oh. Excuse me. All right. Oh, thank you. So our mill and overlay, which is what we call corrective maintenance, will be in Zone 1, And preventative maintenance, which is primarily slurry seal and crack sealing, will be performed in Zone 5. And we'll move on a rotating basis over the next several years around the city in that fashion. And then sidewalk improvements. So this is where it got really challenging. We had a lot of recommendations, a lot of ideas, a lot of priorities based on the Bike Ped program. And what we as staff have tried to do is this represents a list of the critical gaps within the sidewalk network, as well as those streets that are priority roadways in terms of higher volumes. So by adding these sidewalks in these locations, for example, on Harlan, on Pierce, on 26th Avenue, those streets with higher volumes will add an increased level of safety for pedestrians because it will give them a separated location for them to walk instead of being within the roadway. So those were some of the criteria that we used to really look at how do we cull this list down from all the potential options to get to this refined list. This represents just about 4.8 miles of sidewalk and really fills in those gaps in various locations. As we've talked about before, this shows the 3 segments that we're going to build on Kipling. All of these will likely be challenges. There's a reason probably why they haven't been built, right? So whether that's utility poles in the way, steep driveways where we'll have to work back into the private land in order to match into their existing driveways, hills as that bottom photo shows, there are a lot of challenges with those. So not as simple as just going out tomorrow and laying down sidewalk. There will be some design and potentially some right-of-way and definitely coordination with the adjacent property owners to get these projects done. West 35th Avenue, this is a DRCOG TIP-funded project, at least for the construction, or excuse me, for the design. And then the construction would be on the city to do that. Those funds become available for use this fall, October 1st. So we will be kicking off that project a little bit later this year and hopefully moving into design in 2026 with construction in 27 or 28. So the intent here would be to add on-street or separated bike facilities as well as sidewalks along that entire corridor connecting Wadsworth up to Sheridan Boulevard. And then we have included money each year, again, on that same rotation as the pavement maintenance, to do complete sidewalk repairs to reduce those trip hazards and any broken concrete or significantly damaged sidewalks, as well as install ADA ramps to meet current ADA guidelines. So again, we did Zone 1 last year. We will be working in Zone 2 this year, and again, continuing on a rotating basis, staying 1 year ahead of the pavement maintenance program. In summary, all of this that was just presented to you, overall, we achieved 17 miles of improved pavement, 12.3 miles of new or upgraded sidewalk, and just under 9 miles of new bike lanes or bikeways. We still have left a little bit of money in here for drainage projects. Again, due to our challenging situation with our CIP fund, we did keep some money in here to focus on our emergency storm sewer failures. We just had 3 within the past week that we're working on right now. One very significant one at 50th and Kipling. And we're also in the process of televising some other known problem areas within town and trying to be a little bit more proactive to get ahead of that and repair those before we see destruction of or degradation of the pavement above it. We're also in the process of, and we contributed some money towards updating the master drainage way plan for Clear Creek between Kipling and Wadsworth, which will help support projects through the Mile High Flood District within that stretch of the creek. Overall, you can see there in the table, the first column or the middle column shows what was presented back in April of *24. So again, our wants outmatched our available funding by significantly, and this represents the final column, or the far right column represents what we've gotten it down to achieve what was just presented within that $75 million cap So you can see each group really took a bit of a hit in each category. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions and stand ready to answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Great presentation. We'll go first to Counselor Holteen.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, and thank you, Maria, and your staff for all the work on this. So I want to just clarify. So what you presented obviously is both bonding tranches of funding. Is that correct?
Correct.
And help me understand, this assumes that we are going to be utilizing what has traditionally been used for CIP, will be coming out of 2J funds, like for the surface.
Only for 25 and 26. I think
Okay.
after 26, we started to put money back into CIP where we're getting back towards those numbers.
Yeah, with a general fund transfer.
Okay.
That's the goal.
Okay. I think, I mean, it's exciting to see this. The thing that strikes me is there's a lot of planning dollars going into this that are going to then be really big project dollars for us to try and figure out how to get those things done. So I'm just really cognizant that I think I'm a little surprised at how much is going into planning that then is going to be more funding we're going to have to try and figure out. So I'm going to take this opportunity to underscore the importance that we need to figure out permanent CIP funding and ways that we can actually fund the improvements to our streets, because we have, more and more people who are moving here. I can't even tell you how many people I'm seeing walking and riding bikes through my neighborhood. And they're little kids. And so I think, I do kind of feel like 2J was sold to our community as being more bike ped and a little bit more around vibrant corridors and a little bit less around traffic signal studies and resurfacing. So I'm a little concerned that this project list doesn't align with what 2J, what I think our voters think they voted for. And I'm definitely concerned that we're doing a lot of studies that we're not going to be able to fund. And I don't know if I have a good response to that, but I guess the question is with what are we doing with tonight's study session in terms of next steps?
Yeah, the intent would be is to either direct staff to move forward as indicated in the presentation tonight so that we can begin to communicate that to the public of what the final list is, or if you have suggestions to modify that, for example, reducing pavement maintenance, we would go back to, the drawing board essentially and try and look at modifying those numbers to put more into one or other categories or certain particular projects that the council might suggest.
Do we have to commit all 75 million now, or are we in a position where we could pick stuff for the first tranche of funding? Because we're bonding in 2 tranches, right?
Yeah, I think we could certainly look at a list for that initial tranche. I think the intent, our desire is to start to work on the design of those elements. So again, to kind of define them for our CIP staff so that they can start those projects and get them moving.
Yeah, I guess what I'm trying to figure out is, this is a long-term commitment, and I'm optimistic that in a couple of years we'll have other funding sources too. So I'm just trying to suss out, are there elements that dedicated CIP could impact this? I guess I'm just not really clear. This is a lot of years of a lot of work. And what do we need to decide tonight for your crew to go back and figure out what they need to get started? Because I'm feeling a little bit out of step with the project list and what the voters voted for and what we need to figure out now as opposed to what we need to know in a couple of years.
So far we have committed to the design, the full design for 38th West between Youngfield and Kipling. So that is already committed. We have expended some 2J funds for some of the storm sewer repairs as well. Otherwise, nothing has been committed yet in terms of encumbered funds or expended funds. So if there was a desire, perhaps tonight for council to say, yes, we have agreement on X, Y, and Z projects, that would give us direction as far as as moving forward. So that's where we are in terms of what's been expended so far.
And then I know we've talked about this, but with the 38th Avenue refresh, we authorized some funding to go and get that started, the planning for that. Like talk me through a little bit what the refresh would look like.
We are working on what's called the request for proposals right now to get a design consultant to kind of start that 30% design. So with a lot of that would be outreach to the adjacent property owners to talk about consolidating driveways and start to have those outreach discussions, evaluate the bike lanes, do the parking study to determine if they really need that parking or not. We have not issued that. So again, those funds, we're moving in that direction, but we have not encumbered those funds yet.
Okay. I'm going to think just a little bit and listen to questions from my colleagues, and I'll circle back. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Weaver.
Thank you. I do like these priorities, because what I'm understanding is the corridors. So I'm trying to equate the written with all of the money here. So basically, you're telling me that sorry, I don't mean to not be looking at you. I'm trying to. So the 38th refresh, the 38th west of Kipling, and the refresh and the pavement is part of the 50 million called corridors. Is that correct?
Correct. And the 26th and Pierce roundabout.
And the 26th and Pier. So that's all included in that 50 million. I totally agree with that one. And then another 20 million, right? That's just dedicated to sidewalks and bikeways.
Correct. And that's these sidewalk improvements.
Okay. Yep.
As well as the city's contribution towards the 35th Avenue multimodal, which would be our match for the design grant, as well as all of the construction costs.
Right.
And then the third element was the sidewalk repairs and ADA ramps. So there's three
Right.
pieces to the sidewalks and bikeways.
And in the corridors project, there's also going to be sidewalk repairs and bike lane improvements with both sides of the refresh and the west side, correct?
Correct.
So there's actually more bike and ped baked into the first part.
Correct.
And I feel like, I mean, I'd love more money to go towards drainage, but I just think we have to have some more money. I actually like these priorities, and I can't imagine how hard it was to sort of boil it down to this. So I accept this, and I would like to move forward with this list. Is that what you're looking for?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks for that explanation. Appreciate that.
Counselor Ohm.
Thank you. One question I had is, are any of the sidewalk, would they be available for the Transportation Alternative Program, the TAP grants, like in the future? I mean, I know that's not going to take effect right now.
It depends. We are going after a SS4A grant for 38th West. Some of these streets are kind of too low volume, probably to reach the threshold for either high injury network or anything that would kind of trigger those types of grants. But 38th Avenue is a definite possibility, both the refresh and the west one. The other projects are maybe a little bit too small, too granular for some of the larger grant programs.
Thank you.
Counselor Hoppy.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem States, and thank you, Director DeAndrea, for the presentation. At first look, I was kind of leaning kind of the same way that Councilwoman Hulteen was, until I started kind of looking at the fact that the corridors also include the bike and ped in that. One question I do have though is when it's in the sidewalk and bikeways, there's a piece that it talks about modifications to the ADA ramps and installations of new ADA ramps. Does that mean that we would not be, because we have an ADA plan, and so does that mean that we wouldn't, that would be in lieu of the ADA plan that we've been working on over the last several years?
No, I think it's complementary to that.
So it'd be in addition.
Not necessarily in addition. I think the plan lays out that where we had either missing ramps or ones that didn't meet the criteria, and our intent would be is to replace X number per year. I can't remember if the plan called out specifically how many. The intent of the program is to actually implement that in the field. So not necessarily to do more than what we were always anticipating, but again, to have a funding source for this improvement so that we keep up with the ADA plan as intended.
As I understand it, we have in our budget, we have an actual budgeted line item for
Oh,
ADA
excuse me.
improvements.
We do, and we do have a line in the CIP. But I think the point is that it's not, we need more. We need
Sure,
some more funding.
well, certainly, because by the time you get to the end, we'll be going back to doing it again because of
Yeah.
the small amount we've been able to put into it over the years.
Exactly. So it's been small but consistent.
Yeah.
And I'll just add here, Maria, if you don't mind, that we are planning to, we actually have an RFP out right now for an update to the ADA transition plan, not to award, but just for budget purposes, in hopes that that's something we can fund with general fund money in 2026.
So would the intent then in the 2026 budget would be the ADA, the line item in CIP for the ADA update would not be there because it would be here?
Pretty sure that got zeroed out. So similar to pavement maintenance, I believe we had to zero that out. And so it's coming from 2J in lieu of.
So then potentially in 2027, when we're looking at putting more money into CIP from the general budget, then those line items would reappear in our budget?
That would be the intent, correct?
I guess my concern is zeroing out line items in our CIP budget because we don't have the money for them, but then finding space for them in the 2J bond budget. I'm going to have to think on it. I mean, I do think that the plan for the corridors is definitely the way to go, and I know drainage is all we can do, but if there is some way to make sure that we're spending our budgeted line items in what we already approved in the budget, rather than doing it in the 2J, and that would be with the ADA and with the pavement, I believe, so.
Just taking a look at the budget. It's funny, when we work on this, I always think I'm never going to forget anything about the budget. And then here we are, a few months later, about to start the next one. We did have to, we spent 190,000. We estimated that we were going to spend 190,000 in 2024. We zeroed it out for 25, 26, and 27 because in order to balance the CIP. Yeah.
Gotcha. So, I mean, so we did that, but not with the plan of it being in the 2J anyways, right? Like, we did that thinking like this is something we have to put on hold for 3 years?
No, we did that knowing that we would try to do some ADA work as part of the other work in 2J.
And the original, when we presented this in April of '24, the idea for both pavement maintenance and sidewalk and ADA was to enhance what was already in the CIP. So we knew there was a certain amount in there, and this was to add on to it because, as an example, our sidewalk repairs in Zone 1, I forget what we've been budgeting over the past few years, but it far exceeded that. So once we concentrated it into one area, it's like, oh my gosh, we have all these trip hazards that we need to correct. We knew we would need more money, and so the enhancement portion of it was intended to come from 2J. Now we're taking all of it from there, but still less than what we anticipated in April of '24. or what we might need. So, I mean, it's really a matter of we're moving one egg from one basket to another basket. Yeah, I mean, not a sword that I'm going to fall on, I suppose. I will say that I am in agreement with the projects as they're presented. Thanks.
Thank you. Counselor Dozeman.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I agree with, and given budget constraints, I think that this is a wonderful allocation of funds as they were intended. And I appreciate you kind of working in corridors with sidewalks and bikeways. I too would like to see more drainage projects. And that therein lies my question of if we have a significant amount of emergency repairs, even if we support and approve this as allocated, would we be able to kind of revert funds as needed for an emergency basis? Or where would you be pulling funding for if any other emergency drainage projects come about?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, this is really at this point our best source, especially until Wadsworth is behind us in the CIP. You gave us direction last year when we had our tough budget conversation around, making sure that we're being very disciplined about segregating one-time revenues. We are expecting to have quite significant one-time revenues this year. We've already had one major building development project come through in form of building use tax. There are some other things that might, increase our fund balance with these one-time revenues that we'll be discussing with you sort of our ideas for where to put that money. And part of that might be holding on to some funds for some emergency stormwater. Of course, something that this council has asked us to do is to go and explore the potential for a stormwater fee. And this is exactly why the majority of communities have that fee for both, planned, you bond against it for both planned projects. But I would imagine, Maria, that money also is used for emergency response.
Absolutely, it would cover the entire program. So we currently have a request for proposals out to complete that rate study, and the rate study would cover or would estimate what the rates would need to be to cover emergency repairs, ongoing operations and maintenance, as well as our capital costs.
Yeah. So I think we're committed to trying to ensure we're holding on to some of these one-time funds for these sorts of things. But I mean, driving past the situation on 50th and Kipling that Director DeAndrea explained tonight, there's no not fixing that. There's no not fixing that. It's a legal requirement. It's a big impact to our residents, to the ditch. And that's we have to be prepared for that.
So if we were to approve this as presented, in the case of another emergency in the future, would we be able to kind of shift and reallocate funds as necessary, kind of like we did with 2E? And would that come back before council?
Definitely, yeah. I think, I kept, what was it, 4.5 million in there for drainage. Yeah, so the intent would be is about $1.5 million per year, but obviously we'd have access to all 4.5 million of that right now if we needed to. And hopefully within, that we get the fee decided before we have expended that entire 4.5 million.
Yeah.
That would be the hope.
And I think Councillor Dozeman, very, very similar to 2E. I mean, tonight we're asking for, okay, we generally moving in the right direction. We're to your point, Councillor Hulteen, we have a total authorized amount of 75 million. We're talking about, we can't encumber funds we don't have yet. So we really are talking about the first tranche right now. I would absolutely see between both budget conversations and future updates. I mean, we must have come back a couple times during the 2E plan and said, you know what? Yeah, many times. We planted, to change direction on this. What do you think? Needs will likely change at this point. I think this is, Director DeAndrea's crystal ball is pretty good, but things could definitely change and we need to be flexible.
And just a note here on this, I didn't put a note, but that 5.4 million, you may recall, we had to advance $1 million for emergency repairs that occurred in 2024. So that's essentially paying back, I think that was back into the general fund. So really, we've got about 4.4 4.5 to 4.4 to going forward for drainage in the 2J program.
Thank you. Counselor Hulteen.
I'm up again. Okay, thank you for letting me process a little bit here. So I think I was, first of all, it's a lot of information. I actually read this on Thursday and again on Saturday, so I did my homework. So I guess the couple of things. So when we're seeing that total corridors, it does include a lot of bike ped. So when we talk about going out to the community, I think packaging this differently, and I think you capture it in different ways. But I think when we say corridors, that's going to be, it was interpreted differently at this table, and I can only imagine like out in the community. So really leading with, these are investments, and bringing a lot of clarity around that we're talking about a lot of planning and not a lot of building. That honestly, that's my biggest concern, is that a lot of these dollars are going to turn into needs for more dollars to build. And so how are we really messaging? Now, our community's been involved in a lot of that to date, but you know, they aren't in the weeds on this as much as we are. So I have two proposals. One is, when we talked about this last time, I raised concern about using 2J funds for that Eldridge Street traffic signal. That it's not a lot of money, but I'm not going to squawk over it, but that just really feels like something that like we should be figuring out with our CIP, and it's not 2J funding. And the thing that is just at the forefront of my mind as I look at this is, you know, we've initiated conversations with Stevens Elementary, which is now having, you know, to cross Wadsworth and 44th, like their articulation area is pretty large. And they're wanting to meet with us in June to talk about some investments for improved crossings. I am wondering if we can carve out $500,000 out of this to do a set aside for safe routes to school crossing improvements, so that our schools, as we're hearing from our families, like I see that there's money going into Miller, and like a lot of the funds are centralized around our schools and parks, but we really don't have the flex funding. And I'll say 44th Avenue from Wadsworth east to Sheridan, Harlan, wherever you want to decide Wheat Ridge ends along that weird corridor. I mean, that is, you cannot cross 44th Avenue. There's no signalized crossing other than that, I think, pretty dangerous rapid flashing beagle. So that just to me is an example of the kind of thing that, like, if we fully allocate these to specific projects and don't have maybe a set aside fund so that we can address some community concerns like that, I think that feels in service. So I would like to ask support from my colleagues to set aside $500,000 to come out of the budget that would be a fund for improved crossings for schools.
Yeah. We have a consensus on that.
Thank you. Oh, and I just wanted to respond to Councilmember the TAP funding is really hard because in Dr. Cog region, it gets pooled all together with like CMAQ funds. And so the like TAP funds, and the federal government has literally pulled all of its discretionary funds that have the word bike lanes in them. So for the next couple of years, it's going to be really hard to get grant funding for anything with bike lanes.
Thank you. Councilor Larson.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. And the concern I have is, and this was brought up earlier in the memo here, about the differentiation between the types of projects we're talking about. And when, during our outreach to the community, we asked people about things like storm drains and other infrastructure things, there was a sort of a differences based on what part of the city they lived in, their interests and whatnot. And I think that makes a lot of sense. And the concern I have is that the sort of infrastructure improvements that were included in 2J are being, I think they're being de-highlighted. I'm not exactly sure how to put that, but when you think about it, we are asking, 2J asked people to continue the sales tax that had been in place for a few more years to pay for these bike lane sidewalks, some infrastructure, and that money is now being allocated based on the projects that have been in place for a while, and they're being, those trains is sort of leaving the station, but when we look at things like, important things like storm drains that obviously we're having issues with right now, which is sort of the thing with emergencies. If you could predict an emergency, it wouldn't be an emergency. And so we don't know how many of these storm drain collapses are going to pop up over the next year. And so we've got to be very careful that we don't leave ourselves in a position where we're having several things happen at once and trying to find the funding to manage the repairs. And getting back to my original point, 2J asked people to continue the sales tax, people of the city of Wheat Ridge to continue paying a sales tax. While when we put a utility fee in to support repair to our, and replacement of our storm sewers, we are asking people to pay for that separately and in addition to. So I guess the question is, we're prioritizing some things that may not be fully supported by all of the things that we're asking people to pay for, particularly when we talk about a utility fee that will affect all residences and businesses in the city. And so I guess this is going to take a long time to really kind of, get all the details through, but I just want us to be concerned that our priorities, when we talk about important things like storm drains that are collapsing, our priorities remain in the right place.
Okay. Counselor Snell?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. And I believe most of my questions have been answered. I do have just a couple of clarifying question on the list of prioritized sidewalk segments. About halfway down on Pierce Street, there is Pierce Street West, 33rd Avenue, and then part of the wording is cut off, and I was just curious. It says the north corner of 33rd Avenue and south to... Oh, I'm sorry. I have my presentation. Oh. Hold on. I'll look at that. Sure. I was thinking, that's great. I'll just email you as a question. I should have just done that anyway. The other question I have is, when is someone said this, and I just didn't write it down. When is the second disbursement, the second tranche for the 2J funds?
We haven't planned it yet. I think we were looking at 27 or 28.
Okay.
We sort of put it out in the out years, but that we don't have timing yet.
Sure.
A lot of it's going to depend on the market too. There's a lot going on right now with this administration about eliminating the tax exemption for municipal bonds or the market in general. So
Right.
I think we're just going to have to wait and see.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
That's a really good topic for this group to pay attention to.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Counselor Hoppy?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem States. Director DeAndrea, I do want to just say that there is a potential. I have our Renewal Wheat Ridge meeting tomorrow night. And so if you could email me about the 44th and Tabor traffic signal and the 44th Avenue and Eldridge traffic signal.
Sure.
We have in the past supported traffic signals through Renewal Wheat Ridge. And I just wanted to, I was going to ask Mayor Pro Tem Stites if he had anything he wanted to add. So I'd like to ask for consensus to move forward with proceeding with the proposed project list as detailed in the memo, with the exception of for staff, at staff's discretion to find $500,000 to set aside for safe routes to school crossings, which we already got consensus for, but then to move forward with the rest of it.
I see a consensus.
Thank you.
All right.
So that was consensus to move ahead plus the 500,000 for Safe Routes to School. Okay, thank you. Before Maria leaves, tonight is Maria's last meeting with the city. Oh, sorry, but I think we all just want to give her a huge round of applause and a huge thank you for everything that she has done. We have some tough things ahead of us. That was part of the conversation tonight, but we are in such a better, making me cry too, and I'm not a cry. We are in such a better place because of Maria. When I look at the zones up there, I'm like, this is so exciting. We're so much more organized. Her leadership around street logics, the zones. I'm not even going to come close to hitting all the things, but the cool snowplow tracking, the culture at the parks, at the public works shops, how I think you would all agree buttoned up. Her presentations are, well, we call her Professor DeAndrea, that's for a reason. So I think, man, Maria, you have just really taken us to the next level, and we needed you, and we're still going to need you, and we know where you're going. But again, let's have a huge thank you to Maria.
Thank you, Director DeAndrea. Fantastic presentation as always. Thank you, and we'll miss you.
Yeah.
We will move on to item number 3, drone regulations.
Now's the moment where we hug. John, there is, oh, come up here.
Hey, Chief. I believe we are ready when you are, Chief.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem and council, thank you. As directed by council probably a couple of months ago, we're here to discuss drones. Drones are obviously exploding onto the scene with their technology and decrease in costs, and we're seeing drones everywhere, obviously. And we think we have well, we know we have an expert in Sergeant Bowman here. He's been recognized regionally as one of the drone experts, and our drone program has certainly been recognized by our peer agencies around us who reach out for our support. So I'm happy to have him here tonight, and I asked him to put together a presentation that not only educates on what is possible in the regulation of drones, but who actually has the ability to regulate what, because we cross over with the FAA, and then we cross into municipal boundaries and some other state laws. So with that being said, I'll turn it over to Sergeant Bowman here, who will give we knew we were going third, so we tried to keep it so everybody could stay awake through this, but there'll be plenty of time for questions at the end, so we'll keep it brief.
All right, thanks, Chief, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council, thanks for having us. I wanted to just start out, we're just going to give a brief update on Wheat Ridge PD's drone program, but then we're going to get into some other things that I think is on everybody's mind. So this is our current Wheat Ridge Police Department drone team. It is overseen by Commander Lucas Hunt. I run the day-to-day operations, and those are all of our drone pilots from various parts of the department. Some in patrol, some assigned to the crash and traffic team, some in investigation. So we try and spread them out through different parts of the department. So we're going to start by talking about FAA Part 107 pilots versus recreational pilots. So all of the pilots for the Wheat Ridge Police Department are FAA Part 107 certified. There's different regulations. They must adhere to and be familiar with all the FAA regulations. They must stay at 400 feet or below the above ground level. They must check airspace, weather. They must adhere to the different changing dynamics to night flight. They have to adhere to, and they have to have an understanding of what they call aeronautical decision making, which covers lots of different things. They attend a 40-hour training class through our partner at the Colorado State University Drone Center that prepares them to take the 60-question certification test, and they must recertify every 2 years. They have to stay current they have to stay current and aware of all the laws and regulations. Part 107 pilots have to register their aircraft regardless of the weight. Does not matter what the weight is. They must not fly carelessly or recklessly. They must conduct pre-flight and post-flight inspections that have to be documented. They must keep the aircraft within visual line of sight unless the organization has a certificate of authorization from the FAA and appropriate waivers to fly outside of beyond visual or within visual line of sight. So Part 107 certification is required for all commercial operations, including government. Difference between the Part 107 pilots and the recreational pilots is recreational pilots may not know the regulations. They may fly at whatever height they choose. They may not check airspace and weather or where to find the information. If they decide to fly at night, they may not have full understanding of what things you have to consider and what's required for nighttime operations. They may not understand the overall decisions related to flight and safety. They're required to take what they call a trust exam. Most don't, and I'll give you some numbers here in just a minute. The trust exam is about a 15-minute overview of very general training that's free on the FAA's website. Takes about 15 to 20 minutes, and you answer a very basic 23-question test. So if you're a recreational pilot, you have to register drones over 249 grams. Most don't. They may fly careless or reckless and out of the FAA requirements due to the lack of training and knowledge. They may fly the drone beyond their visual line of sight and create risk. They may fly lower quality drones that are harder to keep control of and create substantial risk. Meaning that they may go to Walmart, Amazon, whatever, and spend $60 on a drone, and you get what you pay for legitimately. They get home, they think it looks like a cool idea. They send it up, and the first thing the drone does everything that they don't want it to do because they can't control it, and a lot of that is based on radio signals. Just to give you some numbers, in August of 2024, the approximate number of Part 107 pilots was 390,000. Same time frame, the trust exam, they estimate between 10 and 13,000 people have taken that. The FAA has registered approximately 785,000 drones. So if you have 390,000 Part 107 pilots that are familiar with what they need to do when they're required to register versus the trust exam that's very general, and you only have 785,000 registered drones. So this is preached in the Part 107 training, and this is part of the aeronautical decision-making. All drone flights should be legal and respectful to those in the area. Those include pedestrians, animals, and private property. Unfortunately, it's not covered in the trust training, believe it or not, which kind of surprised me. It's unfortunate where some seem to have poor judgment and not understand the operations of their aircraft, which can cross the boundaries and violate state law and municipal ordinance, which requires a police response. It is important to note that the airspace throughout the country is controlled by the FAA. It's not controlled by the city, county, or the state, meaning when a drone is airborne at any height, it is regulated by the FAA unless a state or municipal ordinance is violated. And we'll get to some of those Wheat Ridge municipal codes here in just a minute. Do's and don'ts. If you're concerned about a drone in your area, please contact law enforcement and let us deal with it and determine if the flight actions violate any laws. The airspace is governed by the FAA, not the police, but the drone's action may violate laws, depending on what it's doing, depending on what they're doing with the camera, what distance they're flying from people, Are they endangering the public by flying over crowds, moving vehicles, and that type of thing? At no point can anybody shoot down a drone. This is a federal offense, and it's aggressively investigated by the FAA and the FBI and federally prosecuted. Here as of recent, a lot of these are falling under state law for illegal discharge of a firearm, criminal mischief, but they can be federally prosecuted. One case comes to mind where a drone was shot down. The FAA and the FBI investigated it, and there was a $100,000 fine. So we encourage everybody to post no trespassing signs on your property. Your property is your property. People need permission to enter your property, whether they've crashed a drone on your property or not. If somebody crashes a drone on your property, we encourage you you don't have to let them on your property. You can absolutely contact the police department. We will take custody of the drone and do the investigation from there. And depending on what kind of drone it is, if it's a DJI drone, that's all traceable information. If it's a drone that was bought at Home Depot for $35, we're probably not going to be able to get much off of it. So some of the applicable laws for Wheat Ridge. 1741, flying objects is under the Parks Code. It doesn't say drones specifically, but it does cover model airplanes, rockets, horseshoes. I think that it falls into this, meaning that you can't launch or land from a city park. But what you can't control is if they launch across the street from the city park and fly over the park, because that's managed by and regulated by the FAA. Unlawful visual observation. If any person uses anything to look into any house, room, building, or structure within the city through any window, door, skylight, or other opening for the purpose of observing the actions of any person within or occupant of such house. So a lot of the DJI drones and the more advanced drones, if we can get the registration number, we can track back to who it went to. If we have the drone, we can get a court order for DJI to release those records to where we can see the flight, where we can obtain the flight logs, see height, attitude, camera angle, we can see all of that. So cruelty to animals, I think that this absolutely fits it through the harassment portion of 4-11. Subsection B says, for purposes of this section, a person commits an act of harassment upon an animal if such person's conduct or action causes the animal to believe as if frightened, causes the animal displeasure or pain, or otherwise causes the animal to become likely to injure itself or other persons or animals. So I think it absolutely fits that. I fly drones on my ranch, and I fly over my horses, and then I know exactly what my horses are going to do. And Ms. Weaver, you're very familiar with that as well. They sound like a swarm of bees. It's bigger than a bee or a bird, and it can be a little frightening for them. So I can absolutely see where this would fit, and obviously this would be something that if we had to write it, I would write it, and let the courts make a decision on it. So I have encouraged all of our police officers through email, if somebody reports something anywhere in the city that's drone related, to take a case number and send me the case number, and I will investigate it. So if anybody recovers a drone, I will do all the production of records and do all of that. So basically, depending on what kind of drone you're flying, is going to determine what information we can provide from it. So that's a really quick overview of the Part 107 stuff versus recreational.
Yep. So I just add a few quick other things in your packet. We included a bunch of regulations from other cities that try to sort of regulate drones from the municipal perspective. A lot of these are being challenged right now by the FAA. The FAA does not like for municipalities to sort of interfere with their authority, so to speak. Some have set height regulations and some have tried to set place regulations and location. While there is a list, and I believe it's in the packet as well, of where and when you can regulate drone activity, it is becoming harder and harder. We just talked about the city of Cherry Hills Village, Cherry Hills Village striking their whole drone ordinance down themselves for various reasons. But what we're looking for here tonight from council is what we found was ordinances that we think we can use to enforce, potentially go back to Mr. Dahl on those and see if we can do more to put specific language around drones within those. Also, I think there's something to be said for drones that can cause a loss of commerce in some ways. Division Chief Kellogg owns a farm in Nebraska and reports that when they fly drones over his cattle, which they do on a regular basis, or his cows, they don't produce as much milk. So there's a direct loss there. And so there are things we can look at, but really, we are really constricted by what the FAA says we can and can't do. So we do have some regulations, but what we're looking for is that enough what we have, or is council looking for us to do more around drones, knowing what we're up against?
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Sergeant. Great presentation. Let's go to Councilor Hoppy first.
I am a creature puppet. I keep going to the dead microphone. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem States. So Chief, so you said Cherry Hills Village, they just scrapped all of their, so the example of what their drone regulations are in the packet, they've now scrapped those?
Yeah, they just, excuse me, they just hired a new chief, and he thought those were in conflict with what he was seeing on the horizon, so decided to abandon that municipal program. They had one of the more aggressive drone regulations in the area.
But it also seemed more like comprehensive than some of the other municipalities. But okay, so I guess because when I first got this packet, I was like, did I miss the last page that said what we wanted in Wheat Ridge to do? But I guess I didn't. But I do see that in the memo, there's permitted items to consider. So basically what we're saying tonight is this, here is the information. This is what you need to know between 107 pilots, recreational pilot. These are some things we already have on the books that we could potentially utilize for drones being flown in our community. And here are some permitted items that we could potentially consider to put into a draft ordinance, and then the draft ordinance would come back to another study session, and we would be able to then, at that point, kind of nitpick it a little bit. So you're looking for an overall sort of brainstorm type, what types of, do you support drone regulation A or not? And do you like these permitted uses we wanted to consider? Is there anything else we didn't put in here as considering that you would like to ask a question? Is that what we're looking for tonight?
Basically, and really what we're looking for is how far on the skinny end of the branch do you want us to go? Because, these can be and probably are, because of the challenges that are going on around the country, they probably will change. So it's hard to say right now if your direction is we want to do more, we really don't like the way drones are behaving in the city of Wheat Ridge, and we want more teeth in enforcement. That may come back tomorrow. It may not come back for a year or two, but it may come back. So the question is how aggressive do you want the police department to be when we put together a packet with Mr. Dahl regarding drones? Because I think we included the Newton, Mass issue in here as well, and that pretty much is the case, is really the only case law that exists right now for municipalities regulating drones, and the FAA was able to win a lot of their points in the court regarding height restrictions and that sort of behavior. But there is room, like you said, what can be regulated under the FAA guidelines. So the question is, how far do you want us to look into that?
Okay.
Can I just add,
Yeah.
Mr. Dahl is actually online if we need him. Okay. Thanks.
Okay, so I guess for me, when we look at future regulation around drones, I want to make sure that we're still able to have insurance companies look at our roofs remotely, for people to be able to do like the filming of events, or like, I would like to be able to, I have my foster son will be getting married in my yard soon, and I'd like to make sure that it'd be okay that we had, a drone covering kind of the property and like doing a film for that. Like those types of things I want to make sure are still available. What I'm hearing is that some people have been feeling as though their privacy has been invaded. There's concerns with livestock, and we want to make sure that there's safety around emergencies, like when the police or fire are on site. Is that kind of clear? Is that what?
Yeah, and I think what we're presenting here tonight is those areas are generally covered, and probably would be if we added a little bit more to the language to include drones on certain of those existing ordinances that we have in the city. To do a separate ordinance is the one that I think we really get into a question of, is the FAA going to accept it down the road or not? And so, yes. And, to add to your point, people are finding more and more uses for drones. So anticipating what the next evolution of drones is almost impossible right now. We see companies out there that used to have to hike through the woods to find property lines are using it to great effect and saving money, and all kinds of different commercial ventures that are using drones. And then you get into, hey, we want to have a wedding party, we want to videotape it. Well, how are the two compatible? So there's a lot of complications to being able to, to try and parse out who's using it for legitimate reasons and who's not. Under the illegitimate reasons, I think we have some laws in effect now. The legitimate reasons, it's kind of the FAA and a little bit of the Wild West right now as to what happens there.
All right, well, I would say that I'm supportive of the permitted items to consider that you put into your memo, and that I feel that what I would like to see is, with that small amount of direction that we really have, I would like to see where you guys really end up with in an ordinance, and just kind of see, I support you putting together an ordinance with our lawyer, with Mr. Dahl, but, and I look forward to looking at it in the future and being able to ask some questions on could we go further or not, but I don't think that you should have to sharpen the pencil too sharp on the first draft.
Just to be clear, so just work within what the FAA guidelines are, and let's not push the boundaries too far yet until we talk about it again.
Yeah, and add the things that we have already in our, in our code to be able to do some regulating, like being able to put all that into one place around drones, I think it's a good start.
Okay, thank you, that's clear.
Thank you. Counselor Weaver.
I just want to clarify, for those of you who don't know why this came up because I had many drones one weekend flying over the farm, and they were flying low and they were scaring animals. And it does impact life on a farm and the productivity. But it's also a surveilling issue as well, when drones are that low and all of the other things. So I just want to thank you both so much for spending the time and to explain, because there's a reason that they put the sign up that said tonight that we shouldn't shoot them down, because I was told that I probably don't want to spend federal time. But I am, but I think the issue is this fine line between surveilling and what we want to do with drones. And so I just really appreciate having the conversation with you all, because I don't even know if we need an ordinance per se, because I think the things that you brought up were really helpful in sort of adding drones to that language, but just sort of being aware, because one of the things that I found in asking all these questions is we don't have a lot of regulation around it, and all of these things that the FAA really has control. And even to the point that you can put a no trespassing sign, but that doesn't dictate people flying things over or surveilling. And so I really think the scaring of animals and maybe the beefing up of not just looking in windows, but like for me, I do everything outside at my farm, if that makes sense. And so there isn't sort of looking in barns, but you know, I don't know if there's any way to sort of talk about what does surveillance mean? Because and it's interesting because, you know, you can not launch it from public space, but they're really, the private property is this gray area. And so, of course, people see an open area like the farm and it's just entertainment that then, of course, is getting posted online and things like this. So it just becomes this really sort of fuzzy area of are those images theirs? Are they mine? Are they, if they're of me? You know, it makes me sort of want to walk around naked and you know, just give people a show. No, I'm teasing. I won't shoot them down. I won't walk around naked. Nobody wants any of those things to happen. But having this conversation really, really helps. So I'm not sure that I feel like, you know, to Councilor Hoppy's point, I don't want us to spend a lot of time around an ordinance that is probably going to be overturned or challenged, but I just want us to be aware, because what I was trying to get to is I'm not even allowed to put up a sign other than no trespassing. You know, that I don't want to be surveilled, that I don't want to, because there doesn't seem to be that sort of ability to even put that kind of sign out there, which I think is really interesting.
I think you could put the sign out. I don't think we could enforce it, but.
Right.
I don't.
Well, but even, I mean, we had a conversation about whether I actually could put that sign out, because I can't put you know, there's a whole thing on the FAA page that says you can't, if it's a private property, you can't put a no drones.
Right. I think you could put a sign out there that, you know, if scaring the animals or flying over is, you know.
Yeah, owner is a good shot.
It's not appreciated. It's not appreciated. I will say that in the research that I did, it appears that there's building pressure on the FAA to do more around this. And I think ultimately that's where the big stick is going to be. If they set a flight limits on the height around drones or something of that nature, I think you're going to see a lot more input from municipalities when that door opens, so they can suggest, hey, we're having these problems on places like yours and homeowners and whatever, but we still want to manage legitimate ones, and they'll put their minds together at some point. But in the interim, we'll look to create something that bridges that gap while we're waiting for the FAA.
And I think just the organization of having someone to follow up on these things has been really, really helpful as well. Sort of like, oh, okay, you know, let's figure out what this looks like, and having some way to communicate that to people that we are going to look into things. Because what happened was a couple of drones also came down on my property, and it was sort of this thing of people coming to me and saying, well, I just want to go pick up my drone. And I'm like, no, because I didn't happen to be there, and I didn't want them just going on the property and getting their drone. And so it sort of got into this, okay, well, I want to be nice to people, but I also don't want to necessarily give them access when I'm not there, and things like that. So I really just appreciate opening up the conversation, and I'm really supportive of what Councilor Hoppy mentioned, and just again, really, really appreciate the conversation and all the help that you all have provided.
Yeah, just mention that every time we encounter a drone issue, we find the officers are starting from scratch. They're like Sergeant Bowman pointed out, they're just uneducated, and they really have no idea of what the rules or regulations are to begin with. And what common courtesy is, you would think that would just be general knowledge, but it's not. But we do encounter them quite a bit, and they're always dumbfounded. I just bought it, and I thought I could just fly it. And so that's the business end of that, is not doing a good job of educating when they sell that product.
Thank you. Counselor Dozman.
Thank you. So I have a few questions. When we're talking about recreational drone use, are we talking about even the small ones that children receive as gifts? Or does it really just depend on the size and weight?
So that would be a recreational drone.
Okay.
Versus the Part 107 pilot. So that would be the kiddo that got the drone for Christmas and wants to go fly it, and so.
Yeah, so we're talking about even all of those little
Yeah,
small,
I mean, that's my son who
Thinking about
crashed
the little
his drone
color.
Yeah, my
on
son,
his first
my son
flight.
has received one too, and it crashed on his first flight too.
Yeah.
So,
Are you talking about the little colorful ones that don't have a camera?
well, I mean, I don't think the ones that my kiddos have received have cameras. So is that like where it kind of crosses the line
No,
of
once it takes off,
once it
It's a
takes
drone,
off?
it's a
okay.
drone.
Like if it's remote controlled drone, it's a recreational use, and it apply like all of these FAA rules apply.
It's about the airspace is really
Okay.
is what it's about.
Okay, that helps me as a mom of all boys. Thanks. My other question was in regard to how does the FFA challenge? Are they pretty rigorous in how they challenge municipal laws?
I don't know if they're
Or it
rigorous,
depends.
John, but the ones that have come up, it's usually because somebody brings it to the FAA's attention and says, I'm wrongfully accused in court of violating the law, and then it becomes a challenge, and the FAA will say, no, well, the judge will rule that this is FAA's
Jurisdiction.
bailiwick, and it's not yours, so you can't.
And I think that there was a 2017 case in your packet that was challenged, and the court ruled against the city and for the city, like on different aspects of what their laws were.
Okay. And then how prevalent is this issue within Wheat Ridge? Like how many calls and how many, I mean, no.
Minimal,
Okay.
very minimal.
So this is just us trying to get ahead of the technology as it advances, it becomes like,
Yeah, I think so. I think that like the way drone flight looks right now and airspace usage right now in May of 2025, in August of 2025, who knows, it could look way different. There's what the FAA calls their FRIA areas, federally recognized identification areas, where you can go fly a drone. Like right now, all drones have to have remote ID. So all of our police department drones, all of my personal drones, they all have remote ID. The idea behind that is that if somebody's flying over your farm, you should be able to log on to a site and see exactly where the pilot stands. So you could actually go to the pilot and say, you're flying over my farm and you're too low, what are you doing? It doesn't work that way. Like I have tried, and I try it every month, I try different drone tracking apps and software, and we can put our police department drones up that I know have remote ID on. And I can watch our drone and not see it through the app. So I think it's a lot of the idea behind it was good. I just don't think they thought far enough ahead of, okay, cool, now we're going to require this with this theory behind it. How are we going to implement somebody being able to see where the pilot is? There is systems out there that can detect drones and tell you exactly the remote ID number and all that stuff. They're several $100,000 a year to start that program.
so I'm definitely interested in learning more about what, if any, regulations would be possible, because I think the surveillance piece is probably the most concerning of people being able to fly close to your property and see what's going on when they otherwise wouldn't have access and shouldn't on private property. I do think that if we're looking to be more restrictive, that maybe we consider an area like Arvada has where like you're able to fly them.
Yep, you're free to-
So to like give them a space where they can go and grow their community and fly drones together and have it be a-okay. Thanks.
Yeah, just to that question about, or do we have a big problem? No, but they do tend to congregate in areas of interest, like along the stream beds and in the parks. So they just haven't proliferated, and farms, and open spaces where they can fly around and see their drone. So they don't want to fly it in a neighborhood where they can't see it and they lose it. But they will when the technology continues to increase and they don't need to see it. They're more confident in these inexpensive drones, so.
And we've fought that same battle. We've had incidents where we've had a law enforcement drone in the air for a legitimate emergency purpose. And what do we see coming in right next to it? Another drone. And when that happened, I called, we have a special law enforcement number for the FAA, and it was when our program was new. I called the number and said, what can I do about this? And he said, watch where it lands and go contact the pilot. Like, they weren't able to provide us any information at all. So I understand what it's like to have that. Obviously, it wasn't animal related, but we have that, as law enforcement, we have that same frustration, as do several other law enforcement agencies have that same frustration that, you know, the first thing people do when they see a drone or a major crash, if they have a drone, they're going to get as close as they can to it. It's the same as if when the FAA puts up a temporary flight restriction, if you see that on your map, the first thing that happens is people go, oh goodness, there's a TFR, let's go see why. And they go fly as close as they can to it, so.
All right. Thank you. Councilor Ohm.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. The first thing I want to say is that things are changing. I see, you know, we all hear about there's the life safety of being able to drone in some type of equipment for heart attack victims, ER, and then of course now we're getting on the precipice of, deliveries, and I don't know how far that's at, where there could be, right now it's not an issue, but there could be a lot of drones flying around, dropping stuff, delivering, and that could get very annoying. And what can we do? And so my question is if you, I'm generally okay with what you have, what you're asking us to consider, but the one question I do have is, could you just, without too much effort, but work with, our attorney and just kind of rate these, I guess, I've not given us everything, but just like, is this likely to get challenged? Is this kind of a neutral? Is this, unlikely? So unlikely, neutral, very likely to get challenged, and just have that list kind of, I'd say, guess in your back pocket, and then that, I probably wouldn't want to consider things that are going to be very likely to get challenged, in court, but would probably consider neutral, or like these are unlikely to get challenged, so just those kind of simple 3 categories, and Dahl could take a look at and say, you guys could work together and say, yeah, this is kind of the consensus of all these other ones, and we may not even use, we're just going to propose whatever that was, 10, but if we need to, we already kind of have a plan in place that we can start adding some of these down the road, because we already have an idea which ones that we could maybe add on.
Yeah, speaking for Mr. Dahl, I'm sure he's enjoying this conversation and the work in the with the FAA that he's about to undertake. Hopefully it will, but we'll list it. Maybe we'll list it as, this one we're sure we can do, this one we're pretty sure, and this one's on shaky ground. And I think he likes to give 3 different options, and I'm sure he'll do something like that if we can coax him into taking this project on. So we'll give you that list and tell you where we think the weaknesses are and where we think we're strong with an ordinance there, if that's what council's looking for.
Thank you. Let's go to Councilor Larson.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. And the points made earlier about the increase in sheer numbers. I saw something the other day that said the sale of drones will probably double in the next 5 years. They're going to be more and more and more around where we live and work. And I personally appreciate the videos I've seen of the Wheat Ridge Police's use of drones in situations where they're able to go in and surveil an interior of a building as one of the best safety measures I could think of to ensure that when a police officer walks into a building, that it is safe and there's nobody in there that could threaten them. So I think the number of uses from things like police safety to delivery of food, now that one I'm really not sure, but it's coming, and I think we need to acknowledge that. That being said, I have to say that this Christmas, Santa Claus is very good to me. And Santa Claus actually bought me a little baby drone. It is less than a half a pound. And it's, I first flew it around the living room, and the dog barked, and but she got used to it and was wondering if it was something she could eat. But then I took it outside, and I found very quickly that drones that are less than a half a pound, if there's anything more than a slight breeze, they will just go away. So it has to be almost completely without any wind at all, completely calm, before you can fly a drone outside. I do have an area behind my home that is a detention pond that is wide open. It is surrounded by trees, and I found that out very quickly, that on a breezy day, a drone will pretty much automatically head to the tree. So I had to get the ladder out and get it down, and that was my excitement for the day. But after I read our briefing here, I went online and got my trust certificate today. I took the half an hour training program and went through the questions. Really aren't that difficult, but you do have to pay attention, and you read each question, and once you answer the questions correctly, you get your authentication token, and it would probably go on, I think I'll put it on Scotch tape on the side of the drone if I can fit it, because it's very small. The way this drone operates is that it has like a video game controller, and then you attach your cell phone to the top, and that links up with the drone, and that's how you record if you're going to record images. I tested it out. Everything seems to work, but I'm not a very good pilot, so I need some more time, some more recreational drone flying time to improve my my ability to be a good drone pilot. Again, a recreational drone pilot. It's very clear that there are two types of drone operators. There's recreational and there's everybody else. If you make money using your drone, you're not a recreational user. So in going through the memo here, looking at our neighbors, I think the Lakewood approach is pretty good. I think first we should start with the differentiation between the FAA and everything else. Everything that we look at has to kind of start there. But what I like about Lakewood is that first they make it very clear that you do need a permit if you're going to operate a drone in any city-owned facility, park, or open space. But there are designated flying areas in Lakewood. They have 3, a reservoir and 2 parks, and they do have some prohibited areas in Lakewood, which becomes a little more prescriptive. But I would think that if we took that approach in Wheat Ridge, we could probably identify places where recreational drone users can safely fly and not violate any regulations. And then the other approach, if you look at what our neighbors in Arvada have done, it's just a very, very basic. If you're going to film, you need a permit. And if you're for personal non-commercial use, you do not need a permit. And that's basically the about as handoff approach as I could imagine. And then again, looking at the Cherry Hill Village the way they took their approach was basically, we don't want drones at all. You couldn't fly over a public building, you can't fly over a public, private building, you can't fly it anywhere. So I can see now why that was pulled back. But again, I think the approach we take is just sort of a basic, okay, we acknowledge these are out there. We, as a city, can do some things to regulate the safe use of drones, particularly for recreational users. Commercial and Title, I think it's 107, commercial users should get a permit if they're going to be doing anything here, including videotaping ceremonies or events. I think having a permit structure in place, we've already shown that our the ability to issue permits in a timely manner has greatly improved here in Wheat Ridge, so I think that would be a very, very good step. But I do think that we don't want to take too heavy-handed of approach because one of the first things mentioned here in terms of considerations is the rights of users, drone users, to operate recreational drones in places that are safe and in places that will not present a hazard. One of the other things that we have to always be aware of is we want airspace is, again, something regulated by the federal government. And the FAA says that you can't go near an airport, and our nearest airport is 9 miles away. So I don't think we have to be too concerned about that. But I did see an item that said that in Wheat Ridge, we do have a potential hazard when you get near the hospital and their heliport. So I would think that if we do get specific on areas where we want to be careful, where they're operated, that would be the first one. So I do believe that it is time Wheat Ridge put something in place that said that we are aware of the use of these drones. We believe people can operate them safely and not present a hazard or prevent violations of privacy or harassment of animals, and still allow recreational users to be able to operate their drones safely.
Just for clarification, does council want designated areas for us to explore, designated areas for drone flight for recreational users?
I think it gets back to the idea of a recreational user will tend to gravitate toward treeless, wide open areas. That would be our parks.
Yeah.
So are we okay operating drones in our parks, or like some cities have said, we don't want them anywhere near any of our parks? So something to be discussed.
Yeah.
May I chime in, Chief, on that? I just wanted to mention with regard to Lakewoods, I was working at Lakewood at the time, and this came through Community Resources, which is their very big Parks and Rec department. It really didn't come from a public safety angle at all. It came from residents really advocating to have a place a public place where they could use their drones. And so we worked through a public process and selected 3 undeveloped parks. All 3 of those are, there's no sort of playground or improved trails or anything like that in those places. But it was all about that, and it was very much coming up from the community, which I don't believe we're hearing that as sort of an impetus for this conversation, right? I think these are just different angles. You can sort of read, and when you look into the ordinances, you can sort of read through and see whether it was coming through a commercial angle about, around commercial filming, making money on events, or coming through a Parks and Rec angle. That was very much Lakewood. I don't know that PD was overly involved at all in that.
It feels a little bit like they were reactionary in each different community to whatever their issue was,
Right.
like Arvada's. And I would say that one other topic, you talked about the proliferation of drones, but first responders, drones as a first responder is a big thing now, and some of our peer agencies, Lakewood just started it. They will leave a hive on top of the police building and go out and be the first on the call. I'm seeing this, some of the state highways doing it now to get first to a scene of a wreck to see what they need to clear that up. So we're just seeing them auto launched all over the place. And so the frustration that we see in some communities, the YouTube videos where people are just upset that that drone is on their backyard. I expect we'll start to see more of that as these things progress.
I had only suggested a designated area if we were going to be strictly regulating. So that's not necessarily a must-have.
Oh, well,
From my
we can
end,
talk about
but,
whether there is
yeah.
a place like that and bring it back to council and see if you're interested in that, but I don't know that we are responding to anything specific with that request.
Let's go to Counselor Holteen.
I'm sure everyone wants to hear from one more city councilor tonight. I just have 2 points on this. One is, this really strikes me as a similar arena as AI, in that it's a swiftly emerging technology that is here, like it or not. And what do we do with it? I think is a very much emerging edge of our city. And I appreciate, I mean, I think I'm happy to land where the conversation started. I support Councilmember Hoppy's suggestions, especially until we get more, until the FAA figures out their role in this better. I just think we're setting ourselves up into a situation that would be really hard to enforce. And I think, that's what just keeps, striking me down or striking me as I'm sitting here. I'm not being struck by drones yet. As soon as I step out the door, I'm sure I will be. They are annoying, but in preparation for tonight, I actually did some research at what's the difference between a drone at 100 feet, 200, 300, and 400. And, the commercial uses in that 300 to 400 are like really important for like surveying and like commercial property promotion and showing, regional connectivity. Like there's a lot of like good uses. When you get into that 100, that's where you're really in people's, like the granularity and like what you can see in people's yards is like pretty invasive. But that's with like a good quality camera. And so I think we're going to be revisiting this again. And especially, I think us as counselors need to just be cognizant if we're hearing from our constituents, where this come from can come from a lot of different arenas. The drone deliveries are here. They are delivering by drone in the Denver metro region. Yeah. I mean, not hugely, but like I think in Rhino they are. So drone deliveries are here, and it's one less car in the road. So it's not a bad thing from my perspective. But so I just wanted to say, to me, it feels very much like AI, and I appreciate we're going to pay attention. We're going to learn more as this gets better defined. I just think it's in a really horribly defined space that doesn't give us a lot of jurisdiction. And I think though, as a city, I love, any opportunity we have to educate our community about it, encourage them to take the trust test, do that type of education and encouragement would be, I think, really good. And it's performance in the park season is here, but those are opportunities to reach our community and do some education around responsible drone operation in our city. I think is something we can do, and educate people that if a drone is downed in your yard, like you do not have to let that operator have access to your property. You can call the police. I think that's helpful, because that does feel really invasive. Although my neighbor's soccer ball is in my yard all the time, and I don't know what the difference is there, but somehow a drone's not okay and a soccer ball is. So thanks for all your work on this.
Thank you. Counselor Snell.
Thank you. I'll be brief. I agree with what we've discussed so far with regards to harassment of animals and just personal privacy. These seem like very low bar, like this is a no-brainer. You shouldn't be able to look in someone's window. You shouldn't be able to harass their animals. The other thing that I think that's emerging in communities, largely because of fire risk, is drone shows instead of fireworks shows. And I know that I'm guessing probably companies that provide those services have all of the licenses and whatnot, but that's just something that I feel like is on the horizon for us and for many communities, just thinking about fire risk. And I've seen some really cool drone shows, so just something else to think about. That's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we go to Counselor Hoppy, I believe Mr. Dahl wanted to weigh in real quick.
Well, thanks for letting me just watch and absorb this here tonight. But I think it was Counselor Hoppy that said it really the best, which is, this is clearly evolving, and we're not to the point in this study session of saying, do these three things and not those four, and we're all done. And it's because clearly it's a little preliminary. But with that said, I agree. We work within this ongoing tension between local regulation and the FAA, but it continues to evolve, and it will keep going, as Councilor Hulteen said. But what I would be happy to do, and certainly will, is work with Sergeant Bowman and the chief to bring to you what is something that is at a new study session that's a form of ordinance, but is a little bit of a buffet. I think that within that buffet, there are some low-hanging fruit that, when you think about it, aren't drone-specific regulations, but instead are property-specific regulations that, or other nuisance kind of regulations. You're not regulating drones. You're regulating activities that will affect animals, et cetera. And I think that that's a lot more defensible, frankly, and will be. With that in mind, we can certainly, as we put this together, do what Councilor Ohm mentioned, which is give us a little bit of a rating on these so we can make a reasonable judgment as the council about what things you want to move forward with today and what not. On that level, the question of permitting, I think, is one the FAA might take real interest in. But what I do want to do is have a little research done on the regulatory side, see if there have been any other district court cases, federal ones, in this arena. I can give you some comfort that all the ordinances we write, and we'll make sure that this one does this, are declared to be severable, meaning if a court declares that, the regulation for permitting, for example, I'm making up one, is preempted by the FAA, that does not unwind the rest of the ordinance. So it will be a little bit of a collection of things, and some will be pushing the envelope more than others, but we'll use that rating that Councilmember Ohm mentioned so that you can make that judgment. And lastly, I guess it's really true that this arena will continue to evolve. And I think everyone in the room recognizes that we don't have to get it right the first time. And frankly, you'll never get it right in the sense of being done, just like the land use code. It'll keep evolving, and we'll be bringing in amendments that fine tune it as we recognize where the arenas for legitimate local government regulation exist and where they don't. So that's just a long way of saying, I think I've heard you all and made notes, many notes, as you went through this discussion. It's really helpful for me, and I'm on board with working with the police department to bring forward a kind of a working workshop draft for you, which is, I think, maybe the next step, as was mentioned, and we can easily do that. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Dahl. We'll go back to Councilor Hoppy.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Stites. I'd just like to ask for an official consensus to move forward with the process that Attorney Dahl just laid out for us.
I see a unanimous consensus. Excellent. Anything else, Chief? Thank you. Excellent presentation. Thank you. We will go to item number 4, staff presentation, staff reports.
Two very quick things. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Just a reminder that tomorrow, Intermountain Health is holding a press conference at 2:30 p.m. to announce the developer who plans to transform the former hospital campus. So it will be held in the lobby of the former hospital at 8300 West 38th Avenue. Just park in the main lot and follow signs. That's tomorrow at 2:30. And the second is just a quick update on the car wash. So the business has engaged in an acoustical consultant, an acoustical consultant to complete a sound study and determine mitigation strategies. The timeline is unclear at this point, but we'll obviously keep you all informed along with the neighbors. In the meantime, the car wash operator has limited nighttime operations to end at 9 p.m. They've done that on their own. And they've also engaged the manufacturer of the vacuums to purchase and install a sound dampener for the vacuums. The neighbors, yes. I talked to Community Development Director Laura Mikulak today. She said, we'll keep you informed, we'll keep the neighbors informed. So I think, and the PD's informed as well. Yes. Chief, do you have anything to add to that?
Just that their feedback from some of the people who have been here in front of council was very positive about the changes. I'm sure they're not completely happy, but they were very appreciative of the city's efforts to sort of bring this back into alignment.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to elected officials reports. Do we have anybody tonight? No? All right.
Then there were 5.
I'm sure there were some from the people who had to go. Well, then that is it. I will just say that is our last week of school for most of our elementary, middle, and high school kids. So if you see them out and playing and everybody's going to graduation parties, so be safe. Other than that, I will call our study session to a close, and we have a meeting not next week because it's Memorial Day, but we will be back in chambers in 2 weeks. Thank